Welcome to the Direct Lending Connection podcast, your premier source for unparalleled financial insights tailored for elite business owners, international entrepreneurs, and real estate investors. Whether you're running a thriving enterprise, scaling up your real estate portfolio, or looking for the next big opportunity, this podcast is your go-to resource for cutting-edge knowledge and strategic advice that keeps you ahead of the competition. Now, for today's episode, join us as we explore the world of how to monetize non-rated SBLCs.
Welcome back, everybody. Today we're doing a deep dive into the world of non-rated standby letters of credit.
SBLCs.
SBLCs, yeah. We're going to unpack what they are and how they work and, how you can potentially leverage them to get funding for your ventures.
Yeah, and we'll be approaching this from a practical standpoint, giving you a clear and comprehensive understanding of this instrument.
Absolutely. Now, you might have heard of SBLCs before, but today we're focusing specifically on non-rated SBLCs.
Right.
Think of it as a bank's seal of approval, essentially. Like this entity is good for the money.
Yeah, it's a powerful tool for entrepreneurs and businesses looking to get capital outside the traditional ways of lending.
Right.
The beauty of non-rated SBLCs is how accessible they are. They bypass the need for those expensive credit ratings from the agencies.
Yeah.
So it opens doors for a wider range of projects.
That's right. Okay, so we have this guarantee from a bank, but how do we actually turn that piece of paper into funds we can use?
Well, that's where the monetization process comes in. Essentially converting the SBLC's promise of payment into cash.
Right.
And this is where things get a little intricate.
Okay, so let's break it down step by step.
Yeah.
What's the first crucial element?
Finding the right issuing bank.
Okay.
Even though we're talking about non-rated SBLCs, the reputation and credibility of the bank is so important. You want to make sure the guarantee holds weight.
It's like choosing a builder for your dream house.
Yeah.
You want someone reliable with a good track record.
Exactly. And a very critical point to remember is direct engagement with the bank is essential.
Yeah.
Avoid intermediaries at all costs.
Right.
This really reduces your risk of fraud, which unfortunately is pretty prevalent in this space.
We want clarity and transparency every step of the way.
Absolutely. Now, once you've got that SBLC from a good bank, the next step is to find a receiving bank.
Okay.
This bank will accept the SBLC and then help you access those funds.
So it's not as simple as just taking the SBLC and depositing it in my regular bank account.
Not quite.
Okay.
We'll need a specialized trade finance account.
That's designed to handle these complex financial instruments.
Yeah, got like a specialized vault for these transactions.
Yes.
Makes sense. We need the right tools for the job. And I imagine there's some strategic thinking involved in choosing the receiving bank as well.
Absolutely. Ideally, you want the receiving bank to be in the same place as your project.
Okay.
This can really streamline the process and help you with any regulatory hurdles.
Speaking of hurdles, are there specific regulatory things we should be aware of at this stage?
Yes. Each country has its own set of rules and regulations about SBLC transactions.
Right.
It's important to make sure your project aligns with what these instruments are meant for.
So making sure everything is above board and compliant from the start.
Exactly. And this is where paying attention to detail is really important.
Okay.
The wording on the SBLC, the supporting documentation, everything needs to be carefully prepared and reviewed to meet the standards of both the issuing and receiving banks.
So we're aiming for a smooth transfer of information and obligations between all the parties involved. That's the goal. And remember, clear, direct communication with both banks is so important.
Yeah.
Avoid relying on third parties or vague promises. Establish that direct contact and keep things transparent throughout the entire process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's really good advice.
Transparency is key.
Transparency is key. Transparency and direct communication are key.
Absolutely key in these types of transactions.
It sounds like a lot of coordination going on.
Yeah.
But let's talk about some of the challenges.
Yeah.
What are some of the risks that come with this SBLC monetization, particularly when we're dealing with non-rated instruments?
Well, one of the biggest risks is fraud.
Okay.
We're talking about big money here, so making sure everyone involved is legitimate is super important.
Right.
Due diligence is absolutely necessary.
So how can you mitigate that risk? What are some red flags to watch out for?
Good question. One common red flag is when you see a bunch of middlemen involved.
Okay.
If there's a long chain of people between you and the bank, that's a sign to be really careful.
Transparency is key.
Exactly. Another red flag is when someone promises you unrealistic returns or guaranteed profits.
Right.
SBLC monetization can be profitable, but it's not a get-rich-quick scheme.
Right. We're talking about sophisticated financial instruments, not lottery tickets.
Exactly. And then there's the whole regulatory landscape. Navigating the legal and compliance stuff can be really complicated. You need to understand the rules in all the places you're doing business.
Right. And that complexity might explain why we don't see non-rated SBLCs being used more often, even though they have a lot of potential.
It's a good point. A lot of businesses just don't know how SBLCs work or how they can help them get funding.
It's like a powerful tool that people just aren't using.
Exactly. And even for those who do know about them, there's this idea that they're too complex or risky.
Right.
And while those concerns aren't entirely wrong, they can be managed if you have the right knowledge and guidance.
So education and reliable information are really important. Where can people go to learn more about non-rated SBLCs and connect with the right professionals?
Well, resources like directlendingconnection.com are a great place to start.
Okay.
They've got a lot of educational resources, and they can connect you with a network of professionals who can guide you through the whole process.
So it's about finding trusted partners who can help you navigate this field.
Exactly. And there's another really important aspect we should talk about: the SWIFT system.
Okay.
SWIFT is this global messaging network that banks use to communicate and authorize transactions.
So it's like the backbone of international finance.
Pretty much. And understanding how SWIFT works is crucial if you want to avoid delays and manage expectations.
Got it.
So, for example, certain SWIFT messages like the MT760 are really important for SBLC transactions.
Okay.
They're basically the electronic transmission of the SBLC itself.
That sounds pretty technical. Can you explain a little more about these message types and why they matter?
Sure. The MT760 is basically a guarantee message. It tells the receiving bank that the issuing bank has actually issued the SBLC.
Okay.
It confirms that everything is legit and valid.
Good.
And then there's the MT799, which is often used for pre-advice or clarification.
Okay.
It helps the banks involved communicate with each other.
So it's all about making sure the information flows smoothly and securely throughout the entire transaction.
Exactly. We're getting rid of any ambiguity and creating a clear chain of communication.
Makes sense. And the SWIFT system, while it's very reliable, it's not instantaneous, right?
Right. Transactions can take several days, especially when you're dealing with international transfers.
So it's important to factor in those potential delays when you're making your plans.
Absolutely. Now let's go back to monetization.
Okay.
Once the SBLC is in place and all the documents have been checked, the receiving bank can start the monetization process.
So how does that actually work? What are the different ways to monetize an SBLC?
Well, there are a few different approaches. One common method is discounting.
Okay.
That's where you sell the SBLC to a third-party investor at a discounted rate. So you get your money quickly, but at a slightly lower value.
It's a trade-off between speed and getting the full value.
Exactly. Another way is to use the SBLC as collateral for a loan.
Okay.
This way you can borrow money against the value of the SBLC and still keep ownership of it.
So this might be a better option for someone who wants to get the most value out of their SBLC over time.
Exactly. The best way to monetize will depend on your needs, your risk tolerance, and the terms offered by investors or lenders.
So it's a decision that requires careful planning and thinking strategically.
Absolutely. We've talked a lot about the technical side of SBLCs, but from your experience, what are some of the key things that make someone successful with this instrument?
Good question.
In my experience, the people who do well with SBLCs have a good understanding of finance. They're strategic thinkers, and they're willing to take calculated risks.
So they're not just looking for a quick buck, they're building a solid foundation for the long term.
Exactly. And they're not afraid to ask for help when they need it.
Yeah.
They know it's important to have experienced professionals on their team who can help them navigate this complex world.
It's about putting together the right team and using everyone's expertise.
Precisely. Now let's look at the bigger picture. How do non-rated SBLCs fit into the overall financial system?
Okay.
Non-rated SBLCs are a powerful way to make capital more accessible.
Yeah.
They give entrepreneurs and businesses who might not qualify for traditional loans a way to get funding.
So they're leveling the playing field and giving smaller players a chance.
Exactly. And they're opening up new opportunities for investors, letting them participate in projects that they might not have been able to before.
Right. So it's about unlocking potential and creating opportunities that didn't exist before.
Exactly. And all of this can stimulate economic activity and drive growth across different sectors.
That's amazing. Now, as we wrap up our deep dive, what are some key takeaways you'd like to leave our listeners with? What are the most important things to remember when exploring the world of non-rated SBLCs?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey exploring this part of finance. What are the key things you want our listeners to take away? I think the most important takeaway is that non-rated SBLCs offer a great alternative for funding, but it's not a simple process. You need to be strategic and informed.
Right.
It's about understanding how everything works and navigating it carefully with the right expertise.
We've talked a lot about due diligence. Can you talk more about why it's so important with SBLCs?
Of course, due diligence is all about managing risk in this area.
Okay.
You need to thoroughly check everyone involved, make sure the documents are real, and make sure everything follows the rules.
Right.
Skipping due diligence is like building a house on a weak foundation.
Sure.
It's just not worth it.
So it's about protecting yourself financially and making sure the whole deal is legitimate.
Exactly. And remember, the more you know about SBLCs, the better decisions you can make.
Right. Knowledge is power.
Exactly. We've mentioned a few resources. Do you have any specific recommendations for people who want to learn more about non-rated SBLCs?
Yeah, that'd be great.
DirectLendingConnection.com is a great place to start. They have a lot of educational materials, and they can connect you with experts who can guide you.
So finding those trusted guys is key.
Exactly. And don't forget about networking.
Right.
Connecting with other people and businesses who are using SBLCs can be really helpful. You can learn from their experiences and maybe even find partners.
Absolutely. Conferences, industry events, online forums, all great ways to build your network.
Exactly. It's all about learning from others who have already done this.
And building a community of support.
Exactly. And one more thing. The world of finance is constantly changing. Regulations change, market conditions change, new opportunities pop up.
Yeah, that's true.
So you need to stay informed and adapt if you want to be successful with SBLCs.
It's a dynamic field, for sure. You got to be flexible and keep learning.
Absolutely. And one final thought for our listeners.
Okay.
While non-rated SBLCs are a powerful way to access capital, they're not a magic solution.
Right.
You need to understand finance, you need a plan, you need to manage risks, and you need to be ready to deal with some complexity.
So approach it with a clear understanding of both the good and the bad.
Exactly. Remember, financial empowerment is a journey, so keep learning, seek advice from experts, and always be on the lookout for new opportunities for growth.
Some great advice there. So to our listeners, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible. The world of finance, especially non-rated SBLCs, has a lot of potential for those who are willing to dive in and learn how it all works. That's it for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for tuning into the Direct Lending Connection podcast, where knowledge meets opportunity and empowers your business journey. If you found value in today's episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your preferred podcast platform. Your feedback fuels our commitment to bringing you more high-impact insights and actionable advice. For exclusive content and upcoming episodes, and to connect with our network of industry experts, visit directlendingconnection.com. Remember to subscribe here on YouTube and follow us on Facebook for the latest updates and bonus material. Until next time, stay proactive, stay informed, and keep building your path to financial excellence. The Direct Lending Connection podcast, your trusted partner in navigating the complex world of business finance. We'll see you in the next episode.